Hi everyone, a very happy new year to all of you, and welcome back to the very first episode of 2021. So to start this year off, we have Ellie from Alyletters, whom we have collaborated with for our very first tea merch. So without further ado, let's invite Ellie.
Hi, Ellie.
Hi, Natania.
Okay, so firstly, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us this time to just share your personal testimony. So, how did Alyletters come about? Like, how did you decide, or rather, what led you to go into this full-time business?
So when brush lettering first became a hot topic, for me personally, I've always loved art when I was young, but because my parents are very normal Asian typical parents, we've always been in the culture where art was never a viable career option. So I've always just done it at the side, during school. And in fact, for university, I studied engineering. So in 2016, how it started was it started popping out on Instagram. I was like, oh my gosh, the watercolors are so cool. So I started trying it out for fun, literally with no business intentions, completely for fun. I've never taken art lessons before, but yeah, I just tried it out and then I really liked it. And somehow, because engineering was a very stressful environment to be in, I used art to de-stress, to relax, and to also share about my devotional time with God, because I am quite a new Christian. I actually only came to know Christ in 2014, 2015.
Oh.
So yeah, and long story short, God really brought me on my own journey with Him, and it was an accelerated learning. So all these time of devotions with art really helped me to reflect with Him. How it officially became a business was when actually people asked me to do stuff for them. So honestly, it wasn't like I started selling stuff or I started telling people, hey, you can buy from me. But people saw my art. I think they really resonated with the heart behind it because it was genuine and they wanted that for their loved ones as well. So this is why Alyletters started. The heart behind it is really for me to partner with whoever I'm working with so that they can bless their loved ones, so that God's word can be spread, because His word never returns void, right? Yeah, and why I chose calligraphy, because I started out with watercolors and painting and all that. But why I eventually ended up with calligraphy was because I found that writing words was just the most meaningful, practical art form. So yeah, that's in a nutshell how everything started. And I did it as a side for a very, very long time until I became full-time in 2018.
Oh, nice. Was it a tough decision, really going full time into this?
Yes.
And what obstacles do you face and how do you overcome them?
So I was actually doing this as a side all the way, right? And right out of uni, my first job was in a fashion company where I did marketing. And it was a very interesting job that I loved and it kept me interested in the job lah. But I think what was the turning point for me and why I eventually quit my job and went full-time was because when you're at work the whole day, and you're already really good at what you do, right? Sometimes for me, my mind keeps drifting, to new ideas that God's placing in my head. And I just get so frustrated because I don't have enough time to do all of these things. And I think what really got to me, made me snap out of it, was the parable of the talents. It was being preached in church one of the days, and then I went back to read it on my own, and it just struck my heart because in that parable, God talks about how each and every one of us are given different talents, right? But the wicked and evil servant in this parable went and hid the talents. And so I think that really struck me because I felt like my entire life I've been hiding these talents, like art and my love for it. And I realized at that point in time that if this is a gift that God has given to me, it is my responsibility to multiply it. It's not so that it's for my own gain or it's to prove something to the world. But if God has given you a gift and if you don't multiply it, then it's essentially wasted and we're not being a good steward of it. So when I really internalized this entire message, that's when I quit my job. I went to Bible school And then after Bible school, I just never went back to the corporate world and just continued doing this full time. Yeah. So that's
Hmm.
how I ended up in it. It was really
So
parable
like,
of the talent.
so in essence, like, so this business started because like you want to do something for God, right? You want to use your talents that He
Yeah.
gave you. So
Yeah.
like there can be some people that can struggle with that, like just because it's kind of like a God-led thing or that it's something that they're doing for God doesn't mean it's a like a straight flowery path for them. So
Yeah.
what would you say to these people who are like struggling with fully doing what's for God and what God has called them to do?
I think that to answer that question, that person really needs to be able to hear God's voice, be in close relationship with God, because not all the time when God gives you a talent or gives you a skill, you are supposed to follow it full time. Sometimes it's really just for ministry. Sometimes it's a side gig because maybe your main calling is still in your job. So I think that there is no straight answer for this. For me, I wrestled with it for a very long time. And why I eventually did this was because I, like, the parable of the talent spoke to me. And that was in a season where I was really asking God, okay, like, should I move on to a next job? Should I go to Bible school? Should I do this full time? What do you want me to do? And that was his response to me. But I think that for different people, when you ask God, and if you're really seeking to hear his voice, he will answer. Yeah, and also not to paint a very rosy picture for myself, it wasn't very easy at the start. Like coming from a corporate job, the pay is high, the pay is stable, you get perks, like you get medical benefits, holiday benefits. For my company in particular, we had very good like holiday benefits because they owned hotels. So it was
Oh,
something that I really enjoyed. But once you quit, you don't have medical benefits anymore. You can't see the doctor for free. There's no more CPF. There is very unstable income, and not everyone can live with that. So I think that for someone, if you really want to do this full time, you need to make sure that you're able to do this because you actually love what you do. You can't do it like purely for finances, purely for fame or fortune or all of that. And I think that the entire process, personally for me lah, was a very humbling journey because at every step of the way, if you think that you can do it yourself, for me, it just failed, like failed really badly. And so it forced me to really keep going back to God, to rely on Him, to ask Him and seek Him. God, what's the next step? What's the next thing you want me to do? And to just do it. Because I think in like the creative industry, there is this misconception also. I don't know if I'm digressing, but just sharing. There is
okay.
like this misconception where, oh, there are so many calligraphers, and then like if this person succeeds, if that person succeeds, I have no place here anymore because there's just not enough space for me here. But I think that that's false because if God is really calling you to do something, it will not be copied from someone else. The misconception is that there is a pie, and then if someone takes a piece of that pie, you have lesser left. But God is the creator, right? He created everything from scratch. If we serve Him, we serve from a place of abundance. And so when you really embrace that, like personally for me, when I embraced that and I didn't feel like threatened by other people, that's when God really started to work. Like He gave me new ideas that no one ever had. For example, for weddings, right? Like the wedding calligraphy industry is so extremely saturated, but God gave me this idea of a blessing booth, which has never been done in Singapore, has never even been done overseas. The entire concept He gave to me while I was taking a bath. When I was just like, when you're in your most relaxed state and you're really just like seeking God in that space, I think that's when He speaks most clearly. And I think for me, what gave me confidence to continue and not like quit after 6 months is really seeing God's faithfulness in giving me new ideas, helping me meet new people. And I think that the people I meet are just amazing because they take the time to like tell me, hey Ellie, your work really blessed me. Like it spoke to so and so. And yeah, just continue doing what you're doing. Like these small words of encouragement mean so much, even if I originally at the start was not compensated financially a lot for it. But I think when your heart is in the right place and if you're really seeking God, He will give you a lot of confirmations along the way. So I think that's what anyone who's seeking to do something should search for. I hope that answers your
Nice.
question.
Yeah, it did. So I
That's
mean,
good.
you mentioned also that going into this business is not without worries and obstacles. So was there any song that kind of brought you through this, and how did it bring you through?
Okay, so my favorite song for this season is called God of All My Days. It really reminds me that in every season, He is there, He is constant, He is never changing, and He's always faithful. So even if Alyletters doesn't work out, even if this ends in the future, like I know that there won't be any regrets because He has called me for this season to do this particular task. And as long as I did it, I was walking in obedience, and that's like more than enough for me. So this song just really reminds me lah. I mean, the entire Christian faith is about trusting Him, right? Like trusting Him for completely everything, for our daily bread, for provision, for safety, for all of these things. And so this song encapsulates all of that for me. Yeah. Whether it's the highs or the lows. So yeah, that's my favorite song for the season.
Ah, nice. Thank you for sharing. So,
No problem.
before we end, do you have anything else to say to the viewers?
I think that my last nugget of wisdom would be just really seek God early on what He wants you to do, because He has said in His word, right, that you are called for a purpose and He has prepared good things ahead for us to do. And I think that this is so important to understand, because it's not just something that we should breeze over, but when we walk in accordance to His will for us, we are kind of like aligning our life according to every single day that He wrote in His book before one of our days came to be. And at the end of our life, when we stand in front of the judgment throne of Christ, like I got this understanding from Driven by Eternity by John Bevere. And it just speaks about how sometimes there are pastors who are called to be accountants, but maybe they thought that the pastor was the higher calling, and then they went down that route. But at the end of the day, when they stand before God, actually they were meant to be an accountant. They could have touched so many more lives, because that's the main commission for us, right? To touch lives for the gospel, to save as many people as we can, to proclaim the good news. And what we do, the vehicle of what we do, whether it's in finance, whether it's in marketing, whether it's in worship ministry, or whether it's in arts and creative arts, wherever God has called you, that's where you are supposed to impact the most people. And if you don't listen to that, it will affect whether you are working truly for eternity or you're working for this short season. And we know that life is a vapor, right? So I think that's what really I want to leave with the listeners or viewers, that don't take lightly God's call for you, and seek Him every step of the way. And it doesn't look like one thing for your whole life. I might not be an artist my whole life, but it just comes in seasons, and you need to just be sure that in that season, you're doing what you're supposed to do at that point in time. Yeah, so that's what
nice.
I thought was important.
So yeah, thank you so much for giving us your time today and for sharing all these things, your personal testimonies and your nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah, always a pleasure. If you want to listen more, I have a podcast. Yeah, and it's just a place to share to share the journey. Because I mean, I've been like you before. I've been in uni, had no idea what I wanted to do, and you just kind of figure it out along the way. Yeah. So I just hope that I could be that bigger sister that I never had.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.